Hey everybody, my name is Joshua Rainbolt. We have Gene Walters here today to share a conversation about the multiplayer and the official process to get up and running with multiplayer. Thank you again, Gene, for spending your time with us, going through some of these abilities to explain to us how this all works. First, why don't you just say hello to everybody? Maybe you can do yourself an introduction. I think that would be great.
Hey, yeah, I'm Gene Walters. I'm a developer uh, at Amazon working on O3DE in field tech and networking. And yeah, just been concentrating on the ease of use for networking, so making sure it's as easy to use as possible.
That's awesome. Okay, so one of the things that we're going to focus on today is as getting the process of multiplayer up and running. It's changed in the last, I would say, 3 months or so, quite drastically from
Mm.
what we had before. Some of these updates are essential because we want to make sure how all the pieces work, but also there's different kinds of users who might want to use this video. So we do have another series, I believe, out there that will allow you to set up multiplayer with the multiplayer sample. But we're not going to use the sample today, right, Gene? Tell me a little bit about what we're doing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the sample has a lot of things already set up. Multiplayer, I'm referring to the multiplayer sample, which you could get at through if you go to github.com/o3de. uh, there is a multiplayer sample project, and that's really a good place to start. It's a fairly simple level inside that project with a character that can run around and run into boxes, and it has everything set up that you might want to see when starting networking. What we're doing today is really, I would say, the from scratch method where all I'm starting with is a new project, and maybe now's a good time for me to share my screen if that works.
Yeah, please do.
Pretty large, so let me know if things are too small on text-wise, and I could zoom in
Perfect.
if I'm in a web browser.
All right.
Yeah,
I can
so
see it.
oh, perfect. So the first place to concentrate right here is just this window here. This is the O3DE project manager, and I have two projects. One we're concentrating on is the UI UX network demo, and so I just made a new project. I've already had it built, but we're going to first get the multiplayer gem enabled. And the steps for that are on the website o3de.org. If you do a search for multiplayer gem, there is there's a link called project configuration, and we're going to run through those steps now.
That's great. And I'll
And
make sure we link to that document on the page with this video link so people can access those resources.
awesome. And just to clarify, this does have the multiplayer gem enabled. The steps that we're about to run is on top of that. So even after you enable the multiplayer gem to bring that into your project, you still need to do more steps before we get started. So let me just open that up just to show you. I hit configure. Oh, okay, cool. So this is the gems. So you see,
Mm-hmm.
multiplayer is enabled here. Okay, but we're not done yet. So yeah, we could actually close this out, and we're just going to be working in a text editor. I'm going to use VS Code, and I'm gonna follow the steps here. I'm going to follow the steps here, and then we're going to rebuild, and this will allow us, once these steps are done, what we'll be able to do is follow another tutorial on how to make our first auto component. And actually, at the end of the day, what we want to do is something like this. Let me show you this.
That's
At
awesome.
the end of the day, and this is a video on YouTube, although it's a little bit dated on how you achieve some of these things. There's one piece in particular that's dated, but I think this video here is good to show. So this is what I want to have by the end of the talk is a player, which is a sphere for now, that's just rolling around on this really simple map, bumping into objects,
That's wonderful.
and this will be networked. Um,
Okay, and so for people who might have used that tutorial earlier, like, can we talk about maybe what, when we talk about it being
yeah,
dated, like what has changed so they can understand kind of the core
yeah.
updates?
Only one thing only one thing, and it's fairly simple. And the one thing that changed is that back when we were making the video, whenever a client connected to a server, the server would automatically spawn a player, and that was some player was based on some console variable, CVAR. And so what you would have to do is you would set the CVAR to the prefab path, and anytime a new client connected, the server would go, oh, I'll look at the CVAR. It was something like SV for server underscore default player prefab or something like this. That's gone. And we'll actually run through this video. So I'll just follow this video and we'll see what's different.
Okay.
But that CVAR now doesn't exist, and instead what we have is a lot cooler system. But it takes some hooking up. But that cooler system is we have a concept of network player spawners. So now instead of using a CVAR, the user's really in control. You're really in control on, how do you want your players to spawn? You could place them in the world wherever you want. You can get information so that it's not always the same prefab. Maybe some players want to use a different prefab, different characters, or whatever. So it's a lot more powerful, but there's a little more setup involved. And one of the things that I look forward to when making these videos is that by walking through this, I'd love to hear feedback on like how to make this easier. So if some of these things would be good inside of their own gem, I would love to hear that. Like if you think, hey, I think a lot of people would enjoy just a default spawner, default network player spawner that just comes with the engine. That sort of feedback is really good. Maybe people don't want to build their own. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
Cool. So I've enabled the multiplayer gem. Now let's just get everything out of the way that CMake requires for us to start making network components. So I'm just going to run through this and let me know if you have questions or if I'm going too fast. I don't think it's that valuable to concentrate on talking through this so much since all the steps are here.
Yeah.
But
just as we start off, can you tell me a little bit about like what's on your right screen? What is that showing us? Where is that from a project perspective?
Oh yeah, so hopefully you can see this. Let me know if you need to zoom in. But this is inside the CMake list folder. So this is probably quite difficult to see actually, but this is the UI UX networking demo project folder. And so I'm inside the gem folder and then inside of a file called cmakelist.txt.
Awesome.
We're gonna tell CMake about our autogen files. We're gonna use autogen. Networking uses autogen to create network components, so we need to turn that on, and that's what we're doing now. So I'm going to tell my network demo static target about my autogen files. So UI UX network demo. Cool. Okay, so let's see. So I'm adding a new CMake file here, calling it network demo autogen underscore files. This is not. I haven't made this file yet, but we will make this file as part of this tutorial that I'm on o3de.org. Next thing, we need some public build dependencies. So I'll add that here. Really, I'm just gonna copy and paste this to save time. Cool. And we have some private dependencies on gem multiplayer static. Okay. What else? And we have autogen rules.
So why would a customer need to take some of these pieces? Like what is this doing on the back end for the gem?
Multiplayer uses autogen to generate components. So if you're familiar with O3DE, right now if you want to make a component, you make a new class, right? You make a new component class, and there's a bunch of things that you have to do, right? You have to make a reflect method and expose it to serialization and expose it to the editor and expose it to behavior context. But you're doing all this by hand. Networking, we will build these components for you. So you'll see in a little bit, but basically, when you want to make a component networking, you're just editing an XML file. And inside that XML file, you'll have things like, okay, what kind of properties do I have? Like I want to send RPCs, I want to send network properties, I want to send network input. So you define it all inside of this XML file, and the engine will automatically generate that component for you. It just makes it a lot easier than having to do everything from scratch. You'll see that in a little bit, but this is the steps required to get AutoGen working in your project, which does not come by default. So, yeah.
Got it.
Okay, so we've added some AutoGen rules to our static library for the project. And let's see, adding AutoGen CMake file. Okay, so we're gonna make a new. Okay, make a new file right in here. Oh yeah. Cool. Just gonna copy and paste this. That's why it's good to just go straight to this website. You're gonna be copying and pasting a lot of this stuff. Okay, so we're gonna place it. So the tutorial says place it in project name code. It looks like newer projects, this might have been updated, so in newer projects, our CMake files are just right inside the gem, so just leave it there. Basically, just put it wherever you see the other CMake files being put. So we're going to call that UI UX network demo, but this one we're going to call AutoGen files.cmake. Cool.
Now, I know that you and I talked about this previously too, but what would be the reason somebody would want to do it the way we're doing it now versus just using the sample that had just all the bobs and whistles kind of pre-configured for it? What would be the advantages of doing it this way?
There's not too much advantage besides maybe you just have your project already started and you want to now check out multiplayer. If you know that you're going to want a multiplayer game, I think it's a lot. You just start with the multiplayer sample project, because that's going to have all this setup you need. And again, it shouldn't take too long. I mean, we're talking it out now, so it might be an hour. But yeah, if you know you're going to need multiplayer, then just start with the multiplayer demo.
Yeah.
And just to give a heads up, if you do start from the multiplayer sample, and you're probably going to want to rename your project so that it's not multiplayer sample. It would be like Gene's game or whatever. That will require some work. So there's a little bit of work either way. I'm not sure. It shouldn't be too difficult to rename projects in O3DE, but it's not. I will say it's not. It's not just a one button kind of thing, right? You'll have to go and find all the code that's referencing multiplayer sample and maybe change a few file, like for instance, yeah, I mean these files alone, right? Like this has the name of the project inside of the file name, and so you'd have to go through and find all these and rename them, and so a little bit of trade-off either way. One thing that is nice though, I think, walking through this is that it's going to kind of show you what's required. So we're sort of discovering things as we go, like you said. When you are like, hey, why am I adding AutoGen rules? And then the reason is because network components are AutoGen. Maybe that's something that is less discoverable if you don't go through all these steps. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's also good to understand it from the point of view from, like, I think what you said is some teams, when they start building their games, they're going to start in the reverse order, which is testing out how the engine works, what are the feature sets, how do you use them, and then they'll get to a point where multiplayer needs to be integrated to the thing. And now they're trying to reverse engineer a sample project, or they could watch a video like this where it says, okay, like how do we integrate it into your game from these steps? So I think that's a great call out. I think that's exactly what we need in addition to what we already have out there.
Yeah. Now I will counter with just one thing. There is that if you get any way into your game as far as game logic goes without keeping networking in mind, it's going to be difficult to reverse engineer that. Like you really want to if you are going to be networked, you really want to develop game logic with networking in mind. But if you're like just prototyping and you want to see your art assets in the engine, and it's really just art that's in there currently, and you haven't had any game logic, then that's another reason why you might do it in the reverse order, where you start with a single player game, and then want to upgrade to multiplayer.
And that's from the experience of course, like the gym is enabled already by default, but
True.
when you talk about
Yeah.
game logic, I think not so much
Yeah.
of script canvas, right? But maybe C++
No.
or Python, or what do you mean by
Game
that?
logic. Yeah. Script canvas included.
Okay,
So the
okay.
thing is, it's like when you're networking, you have to keep all these machines in sync with one another. And so if you are, let's say you're just making a character controller, you press WASD on the keyboard and your character moves around. You might set up something where you get some keyboard input, and then as soon as you receive the input, you move your player. That's going to change when it's multiplayer. As soon as you have multiplayer, now you're going to want to start using network input to manage that for you. And so if you wrote a script canvas that was just a real simple one, looking for WASD input, and then now you're moving your controller, chances are you're going to rewrite that once you know you're doing multiplayer, because everything needs to stay in sync. You can't just have machines going off and doing what they feel is right at whatever time they want. Now that it's multiplayer, you need to make sure everything's in sync, and you're going to want to use things like network input instead of just doing input however you want. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, so this section, adding a temporary auto component, this is here because, let me just show you why this is here. I think if you, well, that's just weird. Okay, sorry, mate.
That's okay.
The terminal got weird. But if you were just to build this now, I think you'd get a build error. Oh, I'm in the wrong project. Let me get back out here. Actually, why don't we just let's do everything from project configurator. I haven't done that in a while. I usually use command line, but let's use project configurator. So yeah, so if I were just to build this now, I think you'd actually get some errors.
Okay.
And the reason for that is there's a little bug that some build errors here. Let's see what the error was.
You'll have to read it out to us because we can't read your screen from that size.
Yeah, let's see. I could increase the font. How's that font?
Oh, better.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like the error there is error processing expansion rule with auto components. Although this might be something else, but there was an error where if you didn't actually define a new component, a new auto component, it would throw an error. So let's follow these steps here, stay on track, and see if that gets rid of the compiler error.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to make a new. It says to make a new folder called code source, under code source, and call it autogen. So let's make a new folder here. Call it autogen. The autogen directory doesn't. Oh yeah, so we're making a temporary script, but it doesn't need to be temporary, so that's okay. Create a new temporary auto component file. Cool. And actually, let's not make it temporary. We know what we want to do.
Yeah.
We're gonna make a character controller here, and so.
Why would they want you to pull it as a temporary? Just curious. What would?
Because it gets rid of the compile error.
I
so
see.
There's this little bug. Now, if you knew what you wanted to do, and you already had a component in mind, then just do that.
Okay.
That's going to be your best bet. Cool. So let's and then let's make a new file under here. And what would we call this? Let's go back to this demo. Sorry to bounce around a lot, but
that's okay.
Because in this demo I'm actually showing you how to build out this component. And this component we're called simple script player component. Yeah. Dot auto component dot XML. Cool. And I'm just going to use this to copy and paste. since that's here. But let's follow the demo now, starting from here. So we have, this is a XML defining an auto component for multiplayer. So the first step is we're going to give it the name of the script, or not the name of the script, the name of the component. And I'm going to call this simple script player component. This is going to control our player.
Got it.
The namespace is our project. And so our project is UI UX network demo.
Now, just a quick update. If any of the naming conventions, like case sensitive or space sensitive, I would assume that this would fail, right? So we want to be careful here with those kinds of updates.
Yeah, definitely. If make sure that that's right. An easy way to tell, you could open up. Here's my the module. Here's the module for my project, and we can see the namespace. Boom, namespace UI UX network demo. Let's just copy and paste that, and just make sure that. So we got that. Everything else is the same here. Override component. This is useful if we're not scripting. You could make a derived class in C++.
And what would that do? Just curious.
That lets you write your actual game logic.
Okay.
So we need a way to write our game logic. We're just deciding, we'll do it in scripting.
Right.
So if you're gonna override your game logic, then you could use that here. Override it in C++, I mean. But since we're using scripting, we don't need to make any derived classes or anything like that. And then same with controller. So the component lives on every. This is getting into networking here, just like networking paradigms. But the component will be attached to entities that are on the client or the server, the authority or the client. And then controllers are only attached to entities that are authoritative or autonomous. So that means something on the server. So you could also override that logic, and we separate that out. That's really important to separate out in networking, right? Some things you only want the authority to do, right? Some things are really important that you really want to make sure that only the authority can do. And then other things you're like, no, it's okay for just the client to run some logic too. So we're breaking that out, but more on that later. And then, so this next thing here is component relation, and this defines if you have a component that this component relies on, and we do. We are going to, we're going to say this is required. Restraint equals required. Okay.
Now you are making this requirement, but is it required as a system architectural piece? Can somebody make it without a requirement that you're setting up here?
You can, but this is really going to lock it. This is going to make sure that if you ever add this entity, or if you ever add this component to an entity in the editor, it will the editor will tell you hey, you're going to need to add this other thing.
Right.
If that makes sense. So
yeah.
You get that benefit, and then also you get the benefit of just basically just making sure that this other thing, so the other thing being this here, network character component, is around. So there will always be a network character component whenever there is a simple player script component.
Yeah, and from a UX perspective, what will happen is you will add this component, and then it will say, hey, you're missing a fundamental component. A drop-down list will appear. You select that component, and then it will also be added to your list of components from the inspector perspective.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, there's UI to guarantee that. But also what this is going to do is it's also going to, if you're writing in C++ too, I think there's also a, it'll have nice features where it will I'm actually not 100% sure on that, but I think you'll have easier access to those components too. I might be wrong on that. You might still have to grab pointers to those, but I think it might actually store pointers to those for you. But in either case, we really want, the more important thing to talk about maybe now is that network character component is really useful for what we're going to do. It has a try move with velocity method on it, and that's how we're going to move the ball around. We're going to use the try move method, and it's all network supported, so it's a network version of try move. And I'm going to send some network input for moving forward and backward. So I'm going to make one of these inputs. It's just going to be a float called forward and back, and its value will be start off at 0.0, and exposed to script. It's going to be true. Cool.
Sorry, you wrote 0.0, and I'm having a hard time reading that last part of that line. Is that an F afterwards?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just a float.
Yep.
And then we're gonna have another variable left, right. Cool. Okay, so we also need to tell from the copy path. We also need to tell CMake that this file exists. So let's add it to CMake, and that is going to go into this here. Okay. Okay, cool. Let's try recompiling. See what goes on. Let's see if this actually lets us build now.
Right, so you don't have to shut the editor down. You don't have to do anything. You just come back into the project configurator, and you were able to just do a rebuild directly from here.
So you do need to shut the editor down. I'm not in the editor though.
Okay,
So
I'm sorry. The
okay.
project configurator.
Yeah. Project configurator can stay open. Let's just see if this compiles. So I think it failed on configuring last time. So we're getting a little bit further, which is good.
That's okay. So let's talk about like what has done so far. You had a character control that was set up. That character controller is set up to a component. That's your networking component. Do you like? Let's just take some basic questions. Do you require any kind of service at this point to run, like AWS or Google or any server side configurations for this to work?
No.
Okay.
No,
So
just your compiler.
right. And then from here, what will be shown to you once you expect the outcome? Will you expect to see a screen where a ball can move on the page, or what's your first step to verify that this has gone through the pipeline?
No, we're a bit away from that. So right now, what I'm hoping for is that everything compiles successfully.
Got it.
Beyond that, then we're going. Even if everything compiles successfully now, we still will not see our component in the editor. I will not be able to add that component to an entity yet. That's what this next step is for. So we're registering. We've registered AutoGen with the engine or with our project. So we know our project knows about AutoGen, and we've added. We've created our first AutoGen XML. Remember, but we only did that right because there was this little bug that required it. But theoretically, if we didn't do that yet, then we could have just compiled without making that XML file.
Got
But
it.
we made the XML file. We told our project that it exists. That's what you're seeing here. And then next, what we need to do is we actually need to tell the project, hey, we want to create component descriptors which will register these AutoGen components with the project. So then I will be able to go and open the editor, and then when I add that component to an entity. And but that comes even after this.
All right. Okay, the build failed.
Oh no.
So, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this. What happened here?
I don't know. Let's check it out. It could just be that we need to do more, follow the rest of these steps on this website for the configuration.
Okay.
But I was expecting that this would work. Now, what I wasn't expecting was that I wasn't expecting for the editor to know about it, but or the engine to know about the XML, the auto component we created. But I did expect this thing to at least compile. So let's view log. So here's the failure here. And it failed during running AutoGen. Failed running AutoGen. So that's definitely us. Error processing expansion rule. Let us look at let's just make sure we've added everything properly. So okay, so like let's make sure we added this to our files properly. Source autogen simple script player component dot auto component dot xml. That looks good to me. Yeah, source autogen simple script. Okay, that looks fine. Now in here, oh, this might be a little bit of a clue. Like this is XML and this is,
Can you zoom in for us a little bit? So
yeah. I mean, I'm just interested in why the syntax highlighting did not work here. I don't know if you see that.
Yeah.
That looks different. Maybe we forgot something. Oh, look at that. Okay,
There you go.
let's try that. Okay, that looks good. Or certainly better. I don't know that it's going to compile. There might be another error, but at least that's one error down.
Gotcha.
So let's rebuild. And it looks like it got fairly far in the process, right? So it got, not, I don't think there's anything that, besides our project, that depends on this stuff. Or, I mean, our nothing depends on this besides the project. So this was the last line. So hopefully the build time isn't too long. Oh, one error generated. Hold up. What is that? Well, okay, never mind.
You're gonna go wait.
We'll just let this do this thing. We'll let it do its thing, and then we'll see what happened when it's done.
All right. And I saw you had a readout before. How did you generate that readout of like where the build is?
Yeah, just clicked on. Well, I think the error actually had a thing that said show logs, but if you ever want to see the log while it's building, this is really cool. You can do show logs, and then just make sure that you open. Like if you open it in Notepad, you won't see the updates, but because I'm opening it in Visual Studio, you'll see that like I actually have updates here. Like, oh, we'll wait a minute. It's compiling 31 of 552, but after a few seconds, you'll see 32 of 500. Yeah, see. Oh, and actually it failed again, as seen here. So let's go back to the logs, and we see this error here. So it says the error here. Let's just scroll over. Okay, so it says physx character gameplay bus.h file not found. Include physx character gameplay bus. So I'm fairly certain we have physx enabled. Let's make sure that our CMake has everything it needs to run properly. So I'm going to go back. Maybe, I'm just wondering, maybe I'm forgetting something. Do I need to include physics? I don't know. So just sanity check this here. Let's see. Public dependencies, AZ framework, public dependencies, right? Build dependencies, public, AZ framework, AZ networking, multiplayer. Okay. And then the private wants me to add multiplayer static. That seems okay. So this is saying pound include physics. Oh, inside the multi. So it's building not my gem, it's building the multiplayer gem. And it's saying physics character gameplay bus.h. That file is not found. Okay. Interesting. So let's see who defines character gameplay bus. Character gameplay bus. Let's see who actually brings that in. So I'll just search. I mean, it's going to be somewhere in physx. Let's see. But can we search? Oh, bummer. Let's see. Can we search in here? No. Oh, okay. Let's see. Control F. This is only searching things that are open in editor when I really want to search everything that's in my project. And unfortunately, I have not set this up on Linux to be like a solution. We can make do with some, let's see. Let's go to This is gonna get weird looking here. Let's go to CD. Let's go to our project UI UX. So while we're in here, I am going to do some searches. Let's have a little cheat sheet for search, for grep search. So let's search inside of all the CMake files for, what was that thing that it's complaining about? Multiplayer gem didn't know what character gameplay bus.h was. So I'm just gonna see. Oh, it's really saying it's not included anywhere? Wait a second. Oh, probably, yeah, well, wait a second. Let's go. This would not be in our project, right? This is not even our project. Let's search inside the engine instead. Let's see who defines that. So that's inside of gems physics code. So yeah, this include is included in the character gem physics code, and then let's see who includes this.
Is there any way for you to zoom in on that view of your code?
Oh yeah, sorry.
I don't know
I'm not sure. Preferences, let's see. Text. Font.
It's okay. Just seeing if we can. Oh.
Let's see. You could probably beef that up. Let's see what that's all about. Select. Alright, cool.
Oh, beautiful.
There we go. Yeah. Alright, so I'm gonna look for this file. I'm gonna see who uses this CMake file. And I have a guess where it is stored, so this might be pointless, but and we'll look inside of CMake text. Yeah. Okay, so it's defined in this guy. So let's go. Let's just keep hitting Control C. Okay, let's go and look for that. See who defines that. Basically what I'm trying to do is I'm gonna see, okay, which library brings in that, which library brings in this include, and then make sure multiplayer, like update the engine so that multiplayer gem also includes it. So that is inside of physics. I mean, this is actually pretty strange, I'd say. Like, why would we need to do anything like this?
Yeah.
And actually, you know what I'm gonna do too, just for this is always good. Let's go and look at multiplayer sample and let's see if it brings in anything physics related. And we might just copy what multiplayer sample is doing.
Now,
So
how are you gonna
multiplayer
narrow down where those file connections might be at?
I'm just gonna look in multiplayer samples CMake list.txt.
I see.
And sure enough, look at that. Right? Physics is in there. Hey.
Yeah, nice.
So
That is
let's.
something I need.
I'm guessing. We'll see. Okay, so this one, I'm just gonna take this, and also we should make a. I think that we should make a bug for either updating the documentation or I don't know.
It could also be a new include, for example.
And this one's private. No. So regardless if it's a new include, you would want the multiplayer gem to work with whatever it needs, right? But okay, so let's rebuild again. Build project, build now. Now that we have this, let's see what else we have. We have multiplayer static.
If you think about it, it makes a lot of sense though, right? Like if you're gonna have a multiplayer game, you need physics enabled to be able to talk about what things are impacted, right, by physics when multiplayer is happening. So having this as a core, dependency makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. You're gonna want physics and networking to be in talks with one another so that the simulation runs nicely. I'm just going to click show logs so that we can see if anything nefarious happens. I think the other log, I think it failed much earlier than this. So I think we've, well, let's see. Wait. No, maybe not. I don't think we've hit the multiplayer gem just yet in here. Yeah, we're doing like starting point input. I'm GUI. Well, all right, we're about 10% done.
Okay. Let's give a pause for the video to let this thing speed along, and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, so last time we left off, we saw that we were using some stuff that required physics. So we updated our project CMake file here. Let's just open that up. Gem CMake list. We added in this physics build dependency, and we sort of gleaned that from looking at the multiplayer sample, because we noticed, oh, they also required physics, but you could have figured that out just by seeing where it was a header file that was missing, so you could go and see where that header file is defined and stuff. But yeah, the build looked like it went all good. So this is the CMake build. It's called CMake project build error log, which I'm gonna write that down. That really is not a great name, because really it's just a build log.
Got it.
It might happen to have errors, but in this case it didn't have any errors. But yeah, this went well. So at this point we could open up the editor, and we'll do that. I'll come back to the project manager here.
Okay.
I'll make that front and center. How about that? And I'll say open editor. It might take some time for our assets to process, depending on how many were already processed from before, but hopefully not. Won't take too long. Cool, we are in.
Nice.
And now
we noticed that the error didn't show up like it did last time, right? Like the pop-up, so we know it
yes.
cleared. Is there any other hurdles that from a user's perspective they would know? Like, as long as it doesn't have errors, we're in a good state. Is that kind of the sentiment we're going with, or is there any internal ways of verifying that it built well?
That right, just having no errors is all we could hope for at this point. So just again, we're on the we're following the multiplayer gem configuration page, and we stopped here at module and system component setup. So we've added our first auto component, but we have not yet told our project about it. So we're compiled, and let's just verify that. So I'm going to make a new level called demo level, and this is I'm on Linux, and there's a little bug on Linux right now. It's hard to see, but my viewport is in the upper right hand corner here. If you grab the viewport like this and drag it, it'll refresh itself.
Yeah, this problem does not happen though on Mac or PC. This is just specific.
I don't think so. Right. Yeah, I think I haven't tried Mac, but certainly PC. That doesn't happen. So I'm just going to make a new entity. This will be the start of our player. But if we go to add component, we type in, our component was named simple network player component. You'll see it's not in here yet, but that's expected. Okay. So at this point, we're expecting this. This is all good. I'm going to save this, close out the editor. I'm going to return to these following steps here. So I'm going to continue the configuration. Let's do that now. So the next step is make the following changes to your projects. Code, source, project name, module. So let's see, gem. So we don't have a code folder, but we do have a source folder. So let's just go there. And sure enough, there is our project module CPP. UX or UI UX underscore network demo module CPP. So we'll edit that, and it says to include source autogen auto components. So we'll do what it says, and we're going to go to its constructor. Here's our constructor, and we're going to add this line. So it says add this line to register your projects. Apostrophe. It's got a little typo. Add this line. I'm going to write that down. Add this line to register. It's going to make a mark of the typo there. It's missing. Yeah, missing apostrophe. But this will register that component we made. So what we're doing now is exposing this to the editor so that we can create a player and add our simple script to it, which is great. Let's see what else. Okay, we need to go to the system component. System component is a sibling of the module. Here that is. We'll add this include as well. And on activate, right here, we will register. We will call register multiplayer components. Cool. Okay. So let's see. So at this point it says let's rebuild the project. So let's do that. Everything's closed. And by everything I just mean the editor itself. You can't recompile with the editor open.
Yeah.
So we will, let's see, let's build it. And again, so after this rebuild, what we're hoping to see, we're going to open up the editor again. Well, first we're going to have a successful compile. Then we're going to open the editor again, and we're going to be able to add our AutoGen component to our player entity. So not too much to recompile. We see we're at 2 of 21, so this will not take very long. Okay. Didn't give us any errors. Compilation's done. Let's open editor.
That's exciting.
Yes. So we're going to open the editor.
All right, where are we at, Gene?
So I have the player.
Okay.
And let's add the component. Let's add our network component. So it's called simple script player. There it is. Simple script player component.
Nice.
We see that it's in our UI UX network demo category. This is great. So I just added it, and you see there's some required components already being, services that we need to attach to this entity. So let's just do that. I'm just going to go through and add each of these. Oh, so the first one I added was the local prediction player input. Mm-hmm. The reason why that is required is because let's go back to our component here. We said that we're using network input. So whenever you use network input, it's going to say you need local prediction player input on here. So that's great. Local prediction player input also needs network binding. This makes sense. Anything that's going across the network is going to need network binding. What else do we need? We need the network character component. Why is that a requirement? Well, we actually explicitly stated that. We said network character component is required. So it's being asked for here. We're going to add that. This has, the network character component has requirements of its own. It's going to need a transform. That makes sense. We're moving around in the world. This is the network transform component, not to be confused with just the normal transform component. The network transform component will allow the transform, the location, the scale, the rotation of this entity to be synced up across all the computers in our simulation. And there's one more thing the network character component needs, and that is the PhysX character controller. That also makes sense. Great.
And now all your errors are gone. You look pretty clear. That looks great. A question for you before we move forward is, is there a way that a customer could have done this via just script without having to use the inspector? Like if they wanted to use script canvas to generate all these nodes, is there another possible way of doing this at this point, or is this something we were kind of working towards in the future?
As far as building out an entity, building out a player, you would want to just do that by hand in the editor.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know characters being dynamic when we talk about multiplayer, and obviously prefab's holding entities itself. So wanted to just verify with you that this was a requirement for building out the player controller.
Yeah. So we're going to cover that, but there will be a time where when it actually comes to spawning the player. Right now we're creating the player prefab, but there will be a time where actually creating or spawning the player, that will be done not by us. It will be done by scripts and other components. But for now, I just want to build the look and the character itself in the editor. And actually, let's continue doing that. So I also know that this character is going to be moving around, so I'm going to need an input. Right? I'm going to need to take WASD and send that to a script. So I'm going to create input. I also know that I'm going to want to drive him with script. So we'll add a script canvas. What else do we need? It would be good if we could see this player. So let's make a mesh.
I like it.
Let's see. What should we use? Let's look for sphere. Sphere, primitives, primitive assets, sphere. Let's use that.
Okay. And then this
Great.
one, primitive sphere asset, those are just general ones that come with the editor, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's actually in a gem called, let's go here. Configure gems. I think if you type in primitive, yeah, there's a gem called primitive assets and it has things in it like spheres, cubes, cylinders. So, and that's been enabled. So, okay. Yeah, I'm just looking at this. This is our sphere. This is the capsule. This is a 1 radius sphere, I think. So, let's increase the capsule radius here. Maybe it's well, let's see. This radius says, what if I do 0.5? That's
like
kind of
sphere.
interesting. Yeah, although I was not expecting that. I expect a capsule's radius. Just because the height is so short comparatively. I see.
Yeah.
So if we crank that up, I see. Okay, cool. Cool. All right. Well, we'll leave this as is, I guess, for now. Let's Well, no. Let's actually try to fix this.
I like your goal orientation there, buddy.
Oh no, because I was thinking like we could probably get away with it, but this is sitting so far underground.
Yeah.
That really I don't think we might not even see the sphere, right? Because the capsule we're gonna see like just the very top of the sphere, and that might actually make it really difficult for us to debug.
What about the offset for the mesh instead of the other way around? Can we move? Is there any offset settings for the mesh itself?
Let's see, mesh stats, LOD. No, doesn't look to be. We could put these in 2 different entities, but I don't.
So what he's talking about there is, encapsulating it for 3 different things, right? One entity that has the actual object, another entity that has this collision detection, and then putting them into like a parent one that holds both of them together, so either a prefab or another entity itself. So just giving some context on what we're talking about there.
Yep. Let's see.
I swear I have played with this too, so I know that there is a way to do this. Oh wait, go down again. Did I see transform values in that last one? Maybe
transform values.
Go back to cube.
Okay, cube.
Yeah, you are in
cube. Not ideal, but
yeah, no, of course. But is that now offsets there?
These are just the cube dimensions.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I couldn't read it from there.
Yeah.
All right.
Actually, let's look at the O3DE website. Let's see.
Gives us any clues on where to go?
Yeah. Let's just type in offsets. Cool. Yeah, so did a little bit of digging, and you can offset colliders, although I'm not sure if that is that works in tandem with character controller. So we're going to leave the character controller alone, and instead what I'm going to do is just use a different mesh that will be, a mesh that will have its feet at 0, 0, 0, basically. So.
And we'll still do some further investigation, excuse me, on this issue to verify that we're just not missing something here. But I think this is a great call out, because I think that there's something else that we could do to just make sure it all works properly.
So here's a beveled cylinder, and that actually works nicely with the capsule. So
nice.
We'll just use that, increase its radius until we get something decent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and let's see, can we hide this? We can't. That would be an awesome feature, to hide a mesh for a second. I just wanted to see where this, but it's basically the collider and this thing are very close to one another, so we'll call that good. Okay, and then we're going to want some input. So
looks like an ice cream cone.
It does. I'm going to make a new input asset, and I'm going to have something called forward, backward. Let's just spell it out. Forward, backward, forward underscore backward.
Okay, so I know that we talked about this kind of previous. We had some code that you had written in one of the components that talked about the forward backward movement. How is that different than what we're doing here? Like, what's the
Oh
difference?
yeah, yeah. So you're referring to these.
Yep.
So our component has defined network input called forward backward.
Hmm.
This one is responsible for sending input across the network.
Okay.
This one is responsible for literally just sending input from my computer keyboard to whoever's listening for it.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense, right? So this is all local, but we need something local, right? So in other words, the player needs to receive local input from the keyboard and mouse or whatever, and then in script, I'm going to pass that along to the network itself. If that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so we'll call this forward backward, and it'll be keyboard, and we're playing with WASD, so let's make W. We'll send a event of +1, and I'll make another input event. It's hard to see, but the window snapped over here, but here, there we go. Another input event map and keyboard, and this time this will be S. We'll send a -1 value. And while we're here, let's do a left-right as well. Why not? Left, right.
Now, does the left-right value work on positive or negative?
I'll send a negative for left and a positive for right. How
Ah,
about that?
interesting. Okay. So
Let's do that.
you're still going to be directional by negative and positive. It's just orientation basically that's affecting it.
Oh yeah, so in script, we're going to receive an input event, and the event name is going to be left right. And we're going to then assume that if the event left right sends us a value of -1, I'm pressing left on the keyboard.
I see.
And if the left right event sends me a value of +1, which I'm going to make now, I'm pressing D or right on the keyboard. Let's see, D, +1. Let's just run through this. Okay, yeah, so just to double check, W forward backward event when W is pressed will send a +1. Forward to backward event when S is pressed will send a -1. And then left and right event, A sends -1, D sends +1. That looks good. Let's save it. And I don't recommend this for your project, but I'm going to save this all in the same file or in the level folder. That way we could just zip up this demo level and you'll have all your assets that you need for it. But normally, you'd put this in some other folder.
Now tell me, why is that not recommended? What would be the potential downside for doing it?
Because you want to use the same input map for every level you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just because you're in level, the first level or the boss level, you're still going to have the same input, right?
Correct.
You're still going to have the same character controller. So, but what's nice about this is that I could just zip up this level, and then you could drag and drop, unzip it into your project, and just have everything work.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm just going to call that input. We'll call that character input. Cool. And we're going to set our input component to use the character input we just created. And let's just make a default. We won't add anything to this just yet, but let's just make a default script canvas. And I always like to do something on graph start. I'm just going to print something.
All right.
Just to know that we're live. And we could say, here, let's save this out. Save as. And same thing goes for here's. I'm going to save this in the level. I don't recommend that, but that's okay. For your own project, I'm just going to put it in the demo level itself so that it could zip up this level and send it out. And we'll call this character controller.
All right. So
Character
just
controller script canvas. Yeah, so I'm making the character controller. I have on graph start. I'm going to say character controllers is alive. Character controller is alive. I'm going to save that out. I'll close script canvas and I will assign that to our player. So character controller script canvas. Great. I'm going to hit save, and just to validate that that part's working, right? I'll hit Control G, and then we should see some output in our console down here that says I'm alive. So let's do that now.
all right.
Control G. Anything? Anything? Oh, hold up. Got an error. Let's see. I don't know if that was old or not. No, looks like we're okay. I saw an error on the script canvas,
Damn.
but
Let's try up. Try it
enter in
again.
game mode.
It looks like your default camera is not pointing at it, but I think we can actually look at the scripts and then.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no. So this actually is fine. So what happened
Okay.
here? This is a net. We've given this a network binding.
Uh-huh.
So when we hit Control G, because this belongs to the network and our editor is a client, it is going to remove this object.
I see.
Yeah. There's no. In order to see network objects, we need to have a client and a server. So
Got it.
so we're still later. Actually, well, I would have to remove all these, so let's not do that.
Yeah. We'll keep continuing
But
on.
yeah. We'll assume that this script is working as needed.
What about the output though? Did you get anything from the output?
No, because this is a network entity,
won't
it
even
gets
get yours.
deleted instantly.
Ah, I see. So not even the
It
script gets run.
correct. This whole thing disappears. This whole thing goes away. Which leads us to our next mission, which is to actually create a network spawner, and we will do that next time.
Excellent, excellent. This is a great start. I'm very excited to see this. Next time is we will continue on this path and be able to get this in game and starting to work with other assets. So I'm pretty excited for that.
Yep, it'll be good.
All right. Well, thank you again, Gene. This is excellent. I'm so excited for part 2 of this. March 16th, a Wednesday at 10 a.m. We'll be hosting the second part live. So
Cool.
I'm excited about that. So thank you guys. I appreciate your time and have a great day.
See ya.